Current status: Chicago rapper Lil Durk, whose legal name is Dirk Banks, continues to be held in a federal detention center in Los Angeles following his arrest last October. This isn't a temporary situation. Months have passed since his initial detention with no resolution in sight. His legal team is currently pursuing two critical objectives simultaneously. Their primary goal is to have the entire case thrown out, arguing that the foundation of the prosecution's case rests on misleading evidence presented to the grand jury. However, recognizing the uphill battle this represents, they're also fighting for a more immediate victory, simply getting their client released from federal custody while the case proceeds through the legal system. This information, with the gravity appropriate for a case that could potentially send a prominent artist to prison for life, with the serious nature of the charges. Lil Durk's situation represents the high-stakes reality many hip-hop artists face, when their lyrics and public personas become entangled with real-world legal proceedings, raising questions about artistic expression versus criminal evidence that will fundamentally shape this case. Core defense argument. The central argument, being made by Lil Durk's defense team, an argument that strikes at the very heart of the prosecution's case. The defense is making the explosive claim that federal prosecutors deliberately misled the grand jury by presenting what they characterize as false evidence to secure an indictment against the rapper. This alleged false evidence centers specifically on song lyrics that prosecutors painted as Lil Durk essentially celebrating and profiting from a revenge murder he allegedly orchestrated. The defense team is vehemently pushing back against this interpretation, arguing that artists should not be criminalized for their creative expression. The most damning aspect of their argument is the timeline discrepancy. The defense maintains that the song in question was recorded a full 7 months before the murder even occurred. This temporal impossibility, they argue, makes it logically impossible for the lyrics to be referencing or celebrating a crime that hadn't yet happened. The defense is positioning this as not just a misinterpretation by prosecutors, but a fundamental misrepresentation to the grand jury. A serious allegation of prosecutorial misconduct that could potentially undermine the entire case. As explained in this complex legal argument, graphics appear showing court documents highlighting the defense's claims, emphasizing the significance of this timeline discrepancy that forms the backbone of Lil Durk's fight for freedom. Charges against Durk. The extensive and severe charges that Lil Durk currently faces. A legal gauntlet that could potentially result in him spending the remainder of his life behind bars. With an array of federal charges, each one more serious than the last. Conspiracy, use of interstate facilities to commit murder for hire resulting in death, using, carrying and discharging firearms and machine guns, and possession of such firearms, in furtherance of a crime of violence resulting in death. The gravity of these charges is underscored by the fact that they involve not just alleged criminal conspiracy, but an actual death. As if this mountain of serious charges wasn't enough, prosecutors have recently added yet another charge via a second superseding indictment, stalking resulting in death, further complicating Durk's legal situation. These charges came in waves: his arrest in October, followed by a superseding indictment in November, then a bail denial after his not guilty plea in December, and now this second superseding indictment with an additional charge. Throughout this explanation, the screen displays graphics showing the timeline of the case's progression and the mounting legal pressure on the Chicago rapper. This cascade of increasingly serious charges demonstrates the federal prosecutor's determination to secure a conviction in this high-profile case, while simultaneously making it increasingly difficult for Durk's defense team to mount effective counter-arguments against so many different allegations simultaneously. Case background. Critical context about the alleged motive behind the murder-for-hire scheme that sits at the center of this complex case. The narrative begins with the 2020 shooting death of King Von, a close friend and associate of Lil Durk in Atlanta, Georgia. According to prosecutors, this death became the catalyst for what they characterize as a revenge plot orchestrated by Durk. The federal authorities allege that Durk, driven by loyalty and a desire for retribution, ordered a hit on fellow rapper Quando Rondo, who was believed to have been involved in King Von's killing. However, in what appears to be a tragic case of mistaken targeting or collateral damage, it wasn't Quando Rondo who was killed in the resulting ambush-style shooting in Los Angeles in 2022, but rather Quando's cousin. An important legal distinction. Lil Durk isn't accused of personally carrying out the shooting or pulling the trigger. Instead, prosecutors allege he was the mastermind who orchestrated and financed the murder plot from behind the scenes. This distinction, while important legally, does little to reduce the severity of the potential consequences. Durk still faces what could amount to a life sentence if convicted of these charges. Images of court documents appear on screen, along with stylized graphics representing the alleged chain of events. This background information provides viewers with the alleged motive: revenge for a friend's death, that prosecutors believe drove Lil Durk to orchestrate this murder-for-hire scheme, establishing the narrative framework upon which the entire case is built. Song evidence controversy. The controversial centerpiece of the defense's argument, the song Wonderful Wayne that prosecutors initially claimed was evidence of Lil Durk's involvement in and celebration of the murder. Breaking down the defense's position on this crucial piece of evidence. According to court filings, the defense isn't just arguing that rap lyrics shouldn't be used as evidence. They're making the more specific claim that the timeline makes it impossible for these particular lyrics to reference the crime. The defense team emphasizes that Wonderful Wayne wasn't even Lil Durk's song. He was merely featured on a track by artist Babyface Ray, which significantly limits how much control or profit he would have had over the final product. More importantly, Durk recorded his verse in January 2022, a full 7 months before the August 2022 shooting that claimed the life of Quando Rondo's cousin. After Durk recorded his part in January, the defense maintains he had no further involvement with the song's production or release. All subsequent work was handled by producers and industry professionals without any additional input from Durk. The defense argues this timeline information was readily available to federal prosecutors, who nonetheless presented the lyrics to the grand jury as if they were created after the murder as a form of celebration or profit-seeking from the killing. The screen shows excerpts from court documents filed by the defense team, highlighting their argument that the government's misrepresentation about the creation and meaning of Wonderful Wayne are the linchpin of the superseding indictment's theory of Mr. Banks's guilt. This timing discrepancy forms the foundation of the defense's push for dismissal, claiming prosecutors knowingly secured an indictment based on false information. Government's response: the prosecution's forceful response to these defense allegations. The federal prosecutors are pushing back hard against the narrative that Lil Durk is being prosecuted primarily because of his lyrics. In their court filings, prosecutors dismiss the defense's arguments about the song timing as neither new nor having a material bearing on the court's detention analysis. Rather than backing down, they're doubling down on their position that Durk should remain detained regardless of any questions about the lyrics. Prosecutors pointedly argue that defendant was not detained because of videos his fans created. He was detained because he is alleged to be the leader of a violent organization, because he orchestrated and funded an execution-style murder with machine guns at a busy gas station, and because he tried to flee the country after his co-conspirators were arrested. In a significant development, prosecutors have now removed all references to Durk's lyrics from their second superseding indictment, a move that could be interpreted either as recognition of the weakness of that evidence or as a strategic decision, to focus on what they view as stronger aspects of their case. Despite dropping the lyric references, prosecutors maintain they have significant allegations demonstrating Durk's role in the execution-style murder of Quando Rondo's cousin. The screen displays excerpts from the government's filings as Milner explains the prosecution's unwavering position that Durk should remain detained while awaiting trial. This response indicates prosecutors are confident in their case even without the contested song lyrics, suggesting they believe they have substantial other evidence linking Durk to the alleged murder-for-hire plot. Flight risk concerns. One of the prosecution's strongest arguments for keeping Lil Durk detained: the serious concern that he represents a flight risk who might attempt to flee the country to avoid prosecution. According to FBI statements, Lil Durk's arrest in October didn't happen randomly. It occurred at Miami International Airport in what prosecutors characterize as an attempted escape. The FBI claims to have evidence that after learning of his co-defendants' arrests, Durk hastily booked at least 3 different international flights in what appears to be a desperate attempt to leave US jurisdiction. According to investigators, he booked 2 one-way flights, one to Dubai and another to Switzerland, destinations that might have made extradition complicated. Even more damning, prosecutors allege he also arranged for a private plane to take him from Miami to Italy, but was arrested before he could board this flight. These alleged flight attempts form a crucial part of the government's argument against releasing Durk on bail, as they suggest someone with both the means and the motivation to flee justice. The prosecution argues in their filings, portions of which appear on screen, that these booking activities demonstrate Durk's willingness to use his considerable resources to escape the legal consequences of his alleged actions. This flight risk factor, combined with what prosecutors characterize as his danger to the community as the leader of a violent organization, has so far successfully convinced the judge to keep Durk behind bars while awaiting trial, despite his defense team reportedly offering a substantial $3 million bail package to secure his temporary release. Family statement. The emotional public statement released by Lil Durk's family, who have broken their silence to advocate for the rapper as his legal battle continues. The family statement, which appears on screen, passionately echoes the defense team's core arguments while framing them within a broader context of artistic expression and racial justice. The recent developments in Durk's legal case have brought a harsh truth to light, the family writes. The government presented false evidence to a grand jury to indict him. This isn't justice. That's a violation of the very system that's supposed to protect all of us. The statement continues by defending Durk's music as artistic expression rather than criminal confession. Durk has always used music to tell stories, to express pain, to heal, and yet those same lyrics are now being used against him. Significantly, the family connects Durk's case to a pattern they perceive of criminalizing black artistry, declaring, "We refuse to stay silent as black artists continue to be criminalized for their creativity. Rap is art." The statement concludes with a direct appeal for public support. As a family, we are asking the public, the fans, and the culture to stand with us. Stand for truth, stand for fairness, stand for the voice. The family's attempt to reframe the narrative around Durk's case as not just about one artist, but about broader issues of artistic freedom and racial equity in the justice system. This public appeal represents the family's effort to mobilize public opinion in support of Durk as his legal team continues their battle in the courtroom. Artistic expression debate. This case has become a flashpoint in the ongoing national debate about whether rap lyrics should be admissible as evidence in criminal trials. Civil rights attorney Adante Pointer, a guest expert, provided perspective on this controversial issue. Pointer acknowledges this as a common refrain in cases where artists' creative work is used to suggest criminal activity, noting the tension between freedom of speech protections and the legal principle that anything you say can and will be held against you in a court of law. Prosecutors are walking a fine line, claiming on one hand that lyrics weren't material to the judge's detention decision, while simultaneously citing other songs like Rumors, featuring Gucci Mane, and an unreleased song called Scoom His, seized by federal authorities, as potentially relevant to their case. Pointer describes the prosecution's argument as essentially claiming, "Your art is mirroring your real life, which is a criminal life." In contrast, Lil Durk's position, as characterized by Pointer, is, "These are lyrics, it's art. If it so happens to generally fit something that really took place in life, that doesn't mean I'm the person or the culprit that did it." Pointer asked what message this sends to other rappers, with Pointer responding that these cases should serve as a bright, flashing red flag warning sign to artists that their creative expression could potentially lead to seeing the inside of a courtroom, handcuffs, and potentially very long prison sentences. The segment shows how Durk's case represents a high-profile example of the complex intersection between artistic expression, particularly in hip-hop, and the criminal justice system's approach to using creative content as potential evidence of criminal activity or intent. Case timeline. Lil Durk has a critical court hearing scheduled for Thursday, May 8th, which could potentially determine whether he remains in detention or is allowed to fight his case from outside prison walls. Attorney Adante Pointer speculates that the judge will likely reconsider the detention order given the recent developments, particularly the prosecution's decision to remove lyrics references from their second superseding indictment. However, Pointer is uncertain whether this reconsideration will happen at next week's hearing or if the judge will wait for Durk's attorneys to file a formal motion, which Pointer believes is being feverishly typed up right now, to be ready for the upcoming court date. According to court calendars, if the case proceeds to trial, it could potentially begin in October of this year. Pointer offers his assessment of the prosecution's case, acknowledging they've painted a strong case that seems to firmly place Lil Durk in the center of the shooting, but cautions that there are many examples of a case falling apart on its way to trial due to witness issues or compromised investigations. He strongly suspects there's a cooperating witness or mole providing information to federal authorities, a common tactic in federal prosecutions, but notes this also introduces questions about witness credibility, especially if they're testifying in exchange for leniency. As the segment wraps up, Pointer emphasizes that despite the challenges, Durk's resources as a successful artist may allow him to put up a very vigorous defense against these serious allegations. For now, Lil Durk remains in federal custody at MDC Los Angeles as his legal team prepares for the next crucial phase of this complex and consequential case.